Welcome back to my channel, My Montana Kitchen, and my name is Sarah Hardy, and I am the blogger behind the blog, My Montana Kitchen, where you'll find hundreds of healthy, family-friendly recipes that the entire family will enjoy. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about sourdough. So I've been doing sourdough for almost 3 years, and over the course of those years, I've kind of just developed my own method for how I do it in my own kitchen. It might be totally different than what you do. It might be totally different than what you've been told to do. I just thought I would share with you because I believe that sourdough doesn't have to be difficult, but that sourdough can be easy. You can make it a part of your life, whether you want to do it every day or once a week, and you can feed your family delicious, healthier bread or many other things, and it doesn't have to take up your whole life. I think the internet has way overcomplicated sourdough, and we see all the things that people do. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do so many stretch and folds, blah, 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 blah. My philosophy on sourdough is that could I do all of those things and make it better? Sure, I could. But also, is what I'm doing right now good enough? Also true. So if you're like me and you don't want to be stressed out by sourdough, but you want to just have an easy rhythm with it, maybe bake once a week, that's what I usually do, then I'm your person. I'll show you exactly what I do and how to do it. I have a zero discard starter method, and I'll link that here so you can watch that video. I never have discard. So, but today, that's not what this is about today. Today, we're going to talk about how to make easy artisan sourdough. And again, this is not something you have to be really strict with. Measurements, I do weigh with a scale just to make sure that I have the right measurements. But as far as timing goes, there's a lot of play in those things, and it doesn't have to be exact. Sourdough is a lot more hardy than we give it credit for. So without any further ado, let me show you how to do it. The first thing we have to do is feed our sourdough starter. Now, if you don't have a sourdough starter, you can get one from a friend, or you can Google how to create your own. I actually have never created my own sourdough starter yet, but I'm planning to do a video about it pretty soon. So here, all I'm doing is measuring out my starter in a jar. I do have a zero discard method for taking care of my starter. So there's no waste, there's no discard, and it lives in my refrigerator all the time. You can check the card up in the corner to watch that video. But I usually feed a 1-to-2 ratio, which means I have 1 part starter. So here, I think I did 150 grams of starter. And then I'm adding 300 grams of just white, all-purpose, unbleached flour. And then I'm going to add 300 grams of filtered water. You don't want to use water that has bleach in it or that has a lot of things in it. If you have city water, you want to make sure that it is clean and purified. So then I'm going to add 300 grams of water. So it's 150 grams of starter and 300 grams each of flour and water. And then I just give it a really good stir and make sure that it's all incorporated. It should be like a thick pancake batter is kind of the consistency it should be. And you can see I add a little bit more water because it wasn't quite right. But yeah, that's all you have to do. Mix it up, and then I'm going to put the glass lid on it and just let it sit on the counter overnight. Now, this jar is called a Weck tulip jar, and you can get them on Amazon. I have them linked in the description box below. My favorite jar for sourdough starter. I like to put them in a bowl or something if I'm afraid there's any possibility of them spilling over. And this is the next morning. You can see how it's doubled in size, and it's nice and bubbly, and it's ready to use. So the first thing we're gonna do is mix the ingredients together. So I have my starter here that I fed last night, so it's nice and full. And I have my scale. I'm gonna do a video soon on things you need for sourdough versus things that are nice for sourdough. One of the things you do need though is a scale. This one is just, I think, from Walmart. So it doesn't have to be an expensive scale or anything fancy, just a scale that will read in grams, and that's what we're gonna measure in. Then you need a pretty large bowl. That makes it easier for when you're doing stretch and folds and all that stuff. So I have my bowl here. I'm gonna put it on the scale and then push the tare button or the 0 button, whatever it says on your scale, so that it says 0 grams. Then I like to do the water first and then add the starter to the water. So we're gonna start with water. Now, I did, you can see here, I did put water in my kettle because my tap water here is not good to use for sourdough because it has yucky stuff in it. So I run all my water through a filter that is in the refrigerator. So the water is very cold, it's refrigerator cold. So I usually put some water in my electric kettle and heat it to like maybe 100 degrees. I don't want it hot, I just want it warm. And then I'll use it whenever I'm making the sourdough. So I'm just gonna add the water first of all. Second thing we're gonna do is add the starter. You can see this did really well in this jar. This is called a Weck tulip jar, and it has a glass lid, and it also has a rubber band seal and clips where you can seal it. This is something that I would say is not an absolute must-have for sourdough, but it is perfect for sourdough. I have 3 or 4 of these jars, and I love them. So we have our warm water here, and we're gonna tare it back to 0 again, and then we're gonna add the starter. Okay, the starter is floating. That means that it's ready, that it's peaked and it's ready to go. So now I'm gonna use my dough whisk to mix it up. But you can totally use a wooden spoon or a regular whisk or whatever you wanna use is fine. Okay, then I'm gonna tare it back to 0 and we're gonna add the salt. Some people wait and add their salt later. I don't always do that. I've done it sometimes and sometimes I don't do it. So it's whatever you wanna do. You'll likely see places say that you need to add the salt later after the dough has set for a little bit. Again, I've done it, I've not done it, and I haven't really noticed a big difference in how the bread turns out. So if there are things that I can skip and still make bread good enough, that's good enough for me. So now we're gonna tare it back to 0 again and add the flour. This flour, excuse me, is from Costco. It's organic, unbleached flour, but any all-purpose unbleached flour will work. You don't have to have a special flour, you just wanna make sure that it's unbleached. So I'm just going to add the flour right here to my bowl and watch my grams back here to make sure I'm getting the right amount. Okay. Then I'm going to stir it again. I don't need this anymore. Stir it again with my dough whisk. Again, a wooden spoon works fine or whatever you want to use. Now you'll notice that it's getting really thick and shaggy. That's okay. It's okay for it to look like that. That's what it's supposed to look like. And when it gets to about this stage here, I just use something to scrape this all out of the dough whisk. As best I can. this is what it looks like. It does not look like bread dough, but that's okay. It will get there, I promise. And I'm gonna show you how. So all we're gonna do now is just cover it with a towel, and we're gonna let it rest for at least 30 minutes. Another thing, this is kind of random, but I just got an Apple Watch in November. And one of, I think, my favorite features about the Apple Watch is that I can tell Siri to set a timer. So, hey Siri, set a timer for 30 minutes. Done. So now I can come back in 30 minutes. I don't have to be watching the clock. It will vibrate on my wrist and remind me when it's time. And we'll go from there. It's been 30 minutes. So we are going to do the first stretch and fold. If you are not familiar with what a stretch and fold is, I'm just going to show you how I do it. Again, someone else may tell you differently, and that's totally fine. There are 1,000 ways to sourdough, and I don't think any of them are wrong. I'm just showing you what I do in my kitchen. So the first thing I do is, you can see it still looks pretty shaggy. It doesn't look like a smooth dough at all. The first thing I'm going to do is I get my hands wet with water, and that helps it not to be so sticky when I'm working with it. So let me get some water on my hands. Then you're going to get underneath one side of it and just pull it up and stretch it over. Then you turn the bowl a little bit, get underneath of it, pull it up and over. Turn it again, underneath of it, up and over. To the last side, get underneath it, pull it up and over. Now, you can see that's already starting to look a little more like dough. Sometimes I give it another couple of folds for good measure. Pull it up and over. That's really all you have to do. Now, your hands will still get sticky. Yes, they will. But the water does help. So that's after one stretch and fold. We're going to cover it with the towel and let it rest. And we're going to set the timer for, I don't know, we can say 45 minutes. However, I do want to tell you, this is not a very strict thing that you have to set a timer and you have to do this every 30 minutes or whatever. There have been days when I have started sourdough, unexpectedly had to go to town, was gone for hours, came home, did another stretch and fold, put it in the fridge, and it was fine. So again, could I do everything perfectly and make a better loaf? Yes, probably. But also, is this good enough? Yes, also. It's fine. So don't stress out about the times. I'm just telling you what I'm doing as I'm recording this video. I'm gonna set it for 45 minutes and then we'll go from there. All right, it's been a little more than 45 minutes actually. To get my hands wet and do it. But remember, I said it doesn't have to be exact between stretch and fold. So here's what it looks like now. It's starting to look more like dough. So we're just going to do the same thing. Get your hand underneath, pull it up, wiggle it a little bit, fold it over. Turn it, get underneath, pull and stretch it, fold it over. And again, get underneath, grab it, pull it up and over, fold it. And then we'll do it one more time here. Wiggle it a little, stretch it, and fold it over. All right, you can see how it's already starting to look better. So we're gonna cover it again, and I'll see you in a little bit. Well, now it's been probably close to 2 hours. I got sidetracked doing something else. So believe me when I tell you, it's not super important for this particular recipe how, the length of time between the stretch and folds. So here's what it looks like now. I'm gonna get my water on my hands and we'll do another stretch and fold. So again, same thing. You can see it's getting easier to work with and you can kind of see through it. So it's getting close to being ready. I'm just gonna do 4 stretch and folds here. Well, this, technically I guess 1 stretch and fold, but around all 4 sides of the bowl. So that's looking pretty good. Now we have a dough ball. And I'm gonna let it sit here. I'm not sure if I'll do another stretch and fold, or I may just leave it to bulk ferment on the counter. But either way, I'll be back soon. I decided to go ahead and do one more stretch and fold. It's probably been, I don't know, an hour, hour and a half. Again, I don't really pay attention to much of the time. So I'm just gonna do one more stretch and fold, kind of the same way that we've done it before. And you can see the dough is much more developed now. And when you kind of stretch it, see, you can kind of see through it. That's what you're looking for. And over. Then I'm gonna cover it and I'm just gonna let it sit until after supper. So that'll be probably like, I don't know, 4 hours or so. And then I'll shape it into loaves. It's been 5 hours since I last did a stretch and fold. So it has had time to rise. You can see some big puffy bubbles in there. This is dry stuff we're just gonna pull out real quick. And you can see that it's risen in the bowl. So now I'm gonna dump it out onto the counter and I'm going to shape my loaves and I'll show you what that looks like. I like to use a tea strainer to dust the counter with flour. I have a video all about tools for sourdough and that's linked above. You can check that out. So I use a dough scraper, but you don't have to use a dough scraper. You can obviously just use your hands. And that works fine. All right, and I'm going to get my hands wet. And just roughly divide the dough in half. I don't even like measure it to see weight wise or anything. I just kind of guesstimate, which means I don't always get it right, but that's okay too. So I just stretch it out a little bit. You don't want to like flatten it completely. It's okay to have a few bubbles in it. And I start by rolling the bottom over and then the top over. And then I pull one side, the other side, one side, the other side, kind of like that. And then I roll it all the way up from the bottom like that. Pinch the edges. And that's all I do. Super easy, not complicated. Again, could it be better and more perfect? Probably. But is this good enough? Also, yes. So I have my banneton here and I just dust it with flour and I put it upside down in the banneton, ready to go. Now I'm going to do the same with the second loaf. I'm going to put the second loaf in. There we go. And then I'm going to put these into like Walmart bags and put them in the refrigerator overnight. And then tomorrow I'll show you what the next step is. It's the next morning and my bread was in the refrigerator all night long, overnight. So I have them here. I'm just going to take them out of the bags and I'll show you what it looks like. They will rise a little bit. It won't rise a whole lot in the refrigerator. That's okay, but it will rise some. So there's one. And here's the other one. So the next thing that we're gonna do is put these onto parchment paper, and we're gonna score them, and then we're gonna bake them. I have a piece of parchment paper, and I'm just gonna put it over top of this. Pull this off. Dust it with just a little bit of flour. I don't want a whole lot. Then I'm going to take my scoring tool. This I did myself, the snake tongue lame. Or lame, however you say it. I do not even know how you're supposed to pronounce it, but I just cut this out. That makes it a little sharper for scoring. But to score, I just do, majority of the time, I do very simple. So I just make some cuts here, like a wheat stalk. Do another one, maybe another smaller one. And then I do my big score all the way from the back to the front. Then I'm gonna put it in my Dutch oven. So I have a cast iron enameled Dutch oven. And to make sure that it doesn't burn on the bottom, I took my Instant Pot trivet and I put that in the bottom here. And then I'm just gonna set the bread inside of that. There we go. That's what it looks like. All right, so there's one ready to go in the oven. Now I'm gonna prep the second one. And again, just a simple score is all you have to do. I mean, you can definitely do fancier things, but this works for me and it turns out pretty when it's all said and done. So, then the big score. Now I have my Pampered Chef deep covered baker that looks horrendous. I know, it looks terrible, but it works. So this is a stoneware piece, and often when I'm baking 2 loaves at a time, I'll use my enameled cast iron Dutch oven, and then I also use my deep covered baker, and that way I can bake 2 loaves at once. Ready for the oven. A little less than a year ago, I decided to try a cold oven bake because I had always preheated my oven at 450 for a full hour with my Dutch oven in it before I would bake my bread. Now I kind of did an experiment and I recorded it, I videoed it all. So you can see that here, I've linked that here. But I was amazed at how well it did. So since then, I have stopped preheating my oven and I just do it from a cold oven. So I turn the oven on, I'm gonna put these pans in the oven. I'm gonna turn it to 450 and set the timer for 55 minutes, or is it 50 minutes? Can't remember off the top of my head. I have it written down. And then I'm gonna take the lid off for about 15 minutes and they should be done. So there's just a tip. You don't have to preheat your oven. It works great the other way. The only thing is it does get a little more brown on the bottom because it's heating while it's baking. So that's why I put the trivet in the Dutch oven, and I'm gonna actually put a cookie sheet underneath of these pans, and that will also help the deep covered baker not to get so brown. It's been 55 minutes, so now we're going to take the lids off of these. All right, I mean, that looks pretty good. Look at the ear. That's probably the best ear I've ever had in my life. Wow. All right, so we're gonna leave these for about 15 minutes with the lids off to brown the top and finish baking. It's been about 15 minutes, so it's time to pull them out of the oven now. Then I immediately put them on a rack to pull. There we go. See, they look pretty good. Honestly, I think that's the best ear I've ever had. Not that ears are super important to me. I just like the taste of sourdough bread. But they look pretty good. And you saw how easy that was. And I find that the easiest way to cut into the bread is to cut it right down the middle, like this. Here's the crumb shot. So that looks pretty good. And then we're going to set it up on its edge like this, and then cut slices down this way. That is far easier than trying to cut whole pieces this direction. I mean, you can obviously do whatever you want, but that is the easiest way I found. Sorry, my dishwasher's hollering at me. That is by far the easiest way I have found to cut sourdough. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. It's very soft. It has good spring in it. Yeah, looks good. I hope that helps you to see just how easy sourdough can be. Again, it's very overwhelming when there's so many people telling you different ways to do it. And I understand I'm one of those people that might be adding to the overwhelm, but I don't want to add to overwhelm. What I want to do is cut through all the overwhelm and just show you exactly how simple it can be to make sourdough. It doesn't have to be on a super strict schedule where, you know, you're tied to your bowl of dough every 15 or 20 minutes having to do stretch and folds. But it's super simple. And my zero discard starter method is an easy way of maintaining your starter. I never discard, so I'm not like married to my starter either, because it just lives in my fridge and I use it whenever I'm ready. And you can see it still makes, excuse me, it still makes great bread. So again, I'm happy with how this turned out, and just follow the simple steps that I have here. I will have the recipe linked below. If I don't have the recipe written up when I post this video, I will put the recipe in the description below. And if I have it, there will be a link where you can click to get the actual full recipe. And if you have questions about it, then feel free to drop them in the comments below, or you can send me an email at Sarah with an H at mymontanakitchen.com. And like I said, I love to talk about sourdough. So if you have a video you would like to see, a question about sourdough that you're wondering about, then let me know and I'll take that into consideration for future videos. Thank you for watching. I hope, again, that it inspires you to see just how easy it can be to make sourdough. Don't let it be overwhelming and confusing to you. Just get in there and get started, and then you'll learn how simple it can be, and you'll most likely fall in love with it. So if you're not subscribed, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel where I have more sourdough things coming soon.